Hello everybody, my name is Alexey Nayden. I am a team lead and Ruby developer at Evil Merchants, and I am really proud to be the opener of RubyC. My speech today is called Wider Than Rails, Lightweight Ruby Solutions. During this speech I'm going to make a quick review of several tools, several instruments, several frameworks everyone could use besides Rails during Ruby applications development. And I'd like to start with the definition of lightweight. Oh, nice. The most common mistake is thinking that lightweight means fast. To tell the truth, that's generally correct, but not every lightweight app is fast. And much more correct definition would be lightweight applications that ones which offer solution for a particular problem, which are straightforward, simple, and which don't try to be universal. That's why they have less code, that's why they're easier to maintain, and as I've already said, they're often faster than universal solutions. On the other side, we all have Rails, and Rails is a great framework. Rails is universal. Rails is suitable for almost every task you meet in your everyday work. So we need some reasons to work with lightweight applications. These reasons actually are pretty evident because simple and straightforward applications, instruments, and tools are small. They usually work faster. They are easier. They don't have complexity overhead like Rails does, because in every Rails application there are a lot of code, a lot of validations, checks. Maybe some things are done which you would never use in this particular application. But you can't throw this code away and you can't get rid of it. So you have to know about this code because sometimes it doesn't work. That's why studying Rails is more complex than studying something lightweight like, let's say, Rec. Additionally, lightweight frameworks usually work on a lower level of abstraction. They are closer to the objects they operate with. That's why they give you more flexibility. And of course, as soon as you study new philosophy, new approach to web applications, to maybe front-end development, new programming language, you just evolve. So let's take a look at typical structure of an empty Rails application. We just have created it, and we can choose whether we want all this code, all these directories, all these files, libraries, some gems already bundled here. We just have to deal with it. But there are several options to move to lightweight applications, and there is certain way not to use revolution but to use evolution during this approach. And the first step you should consider is replacing components of your framework. In terms of Rails, it could be replacing ActiveRecord, or maybe replacing some front-end stuff like jQuery with lightweight components. If this doesn't suit your needs, you can inject lightweight tools inside your environment. And this, for example, means mounting Sinatra applications inside Rails app. And of course, if nothing helps, you can migrate to a completely different platform. You can forget about Rails. You can use the same Sinatra, for example, or Rec or whatever. And there is a very important rule. You shouldn't forget to be consistent. And that means that running for lightweight, running for simple tools, you may come to a situation when you have 15 frameworks, 15 web applications, maybe 50 web servers, each one solving one small problem, but together those 50 lightweight solutions would be a huge mess of nothing. So you should always take a balance between diversity and integrity. And now let's start with tools you can use. The first one is the replacement of ActiveRecord. It's called SQL. SQL is a Ruby gem providing ORM and raw SQL interfaces to more than 15 database backends out of the box. You just install it and you have any major database management system, a lot of not well-known database management systems, and it's very important that SQL is completely compliant with active model compliant. That's why you can include it in your Rails application instead of ActiveRecord, and you will get the same functionality as you had with ActiveRecord. And according to benchmarks, SQL is faster than ActiveRecord. Sometimes 25%, sometimes on certain tasks 50% faster than ActiveRecord. And here we can discuss two parts of SQL, ORM and raw SQL. Regarding ORM, SQL offers a very similar API as the ActiveRecord does. As soon as you know ActiveRecord API, you need maybe 1 or 2 hours to know all the SQL ORM API. Here we have mass assignment, we have different finders, and you can see in find user we work with slightly different code. In ActiveRecord we would use find, but anyway it's really similar. And regarding models, SQL models, they are pretty much the same. We have here associations, one to many, many to many, many to one, of course, subsets, which are actually scopes in terms of ActiveRecord. And the very important difference between SQL and ActiveRecord is modular structure of SQL. We have only some basic functionality inside SQL model, and a lot of code is now in plugins, which are of course included in SQL gem, but you can decide whether to use them or not in each model you have. In ActiveRecord you always have optimistic locking management, and I'm sure that most parts of you guys have never used optimistic locking in real work, but in every model, in every Rails application, you have code trying to work with optimistic locking. So here we have plugins, a lot of plugins like validation helpers, like timestamping plugins working with created data and updated data fields. We have plugins for single table inheritance, and so on. And here we join plugin validation helpers, use well-known syntax for creating validators, and of course we have a lot of callbacks in SQL, of course, before create, after create, whatever. Very interesting around callbacks. We can create around create callback, for example, trying to save records and to handle an exception if it happens. On the other side of SQL, we have raw SQL interface. Of course, ActiveRecords provides it as well. And I just want to explain why do we need raw SQL when we have ORM. There are a lot of tasks when you don't need real ORM and you just want to process data, a huge amount of data, mostly numbers. These tasks often include billing and maybe reporting, and you just need to join a lot of tables to maybe aggregate some data and to give numbers to the user. In that situation, it's much more efficient to use raw SQL, and of course SQL allows us to do that in a easy and straightforward way. And regarding the benchmarks of SQL and ActiveRecord, I'm afraid no one will see it. I'm sorry, guys. But you can check it up in my presentation on the internet. I just can say that there are certain situations where SQL is even 3 times faster than ActiveRecord. Especially SQL is winning during transactional work. When you have a lot of transactions, SQL is much better than ActiveRecord is. And I want to remind that you can use it instead of ActiveRecord almost without any problems. The next tool I want to speak about is on the other side of application. That was the backend and the front end. Not strongly Ruby related, but as I've already said, everyone uses jQuery, and jQuery is fine, but there is a nice alternative, and it's called Zepto.js. Zepto.js tries to be jQuery compliant. It supports now maybe 95% of original jQuery API, but there are certain differences. The first one is size. The target size of Zepto is 5 kilobytes of compressed minified code. Now it's 7.5, but they're trying to make it even smaller. And even now, it's 7.5 versus 31 kilobytes of compressed jQuery. Zepto tries to be the best framework, the best JavaScript library for mobile applications, especially for iOS, but of course it works perfectly with WebOS, mobile browsers, Android browsers, and all major and modern desktop browsers like Firefox 4+, Opera, Chrome, Safari 5+, and it doesn't work fine with Internet Explorer. That's why it's so small, because they are able to use some proprietary code, proprietary APIs of mobile browsers, which allows them to save space. And in mobile world, it's really important because mobile browsers are not very good with caching. And when you can say that almost every visitor of your website has jQuery in his cache, you can say the same for mobile users. So the size is very important, and officially Zepto is in beta now. They've just released 0.5 version, but we're already using it in mobile Groupon, and it works fine. It's completely production ready. I think you should try it, especially in mobile applications. It's very good. Regarding the syntax, it's completely the same. You know, with jQuery, they use the same $, the same handlers, the same events management system, the same API. But they have nice improvements for mobile applications. You can work with Touch UI out of the box with tapping, swiping, pinching, and so on. So this could be a very good solution for mobile app. Then, after speaking about backend, frontend, we have came to the middle and the most heavy part of the applications is controller system, or maybe the middle end middleware. And I should start with the very beginning, the very basic basement of almost every Rails framework, Ruby framework, that's Rec. Rec isn't a web application, isn't a framework, isn't a tool, it's just a specification of the protocol of interaction between HTTP web server and Ruby code. And Rec allows you to connect your Ruby code with HTTP server without any intermediary code. So you have to your application have to fulfill very simple requirements. It should have call method accepting HTTP environment variables, and it should return status, HTTP status, headers, and response body. And it doesn't matter how does it handle URLs, how does it handle anything inside, it's up to you, and you're very close to the pure HTTP. So that's maybe an assembler in terms of a web development with Ruby. And you just need only a few lines of code to create your first REC application. And let's say you have maybe online gaming web server, and you want your clients to know the load of that server, so they could choose whether to connect to a fast one, or maybe popular one, or free one. So this REC application will be very simple, just actual one line of code. But REC is great for such one line, maybe 10 line, maybe 50 or 100 line applications. As soon as you go deeper, as soon as you need more comfort, REC isn't for you. Sometimes because you already have some code, some Rails application you want to speed up. And for that situation, Rails has a solution, it's called Metal. Metal is a code, is a class which allows you to create REC-compatible applications inside your Rails app. You just inherit action controller Metal, and you work with your environment, Rails environment, with your ActiveRecord, with everything you already have in your Rails application. You don't need to include anything. And you can use any parts of action controller stack. If you don't need most part of it, you don't use. As soon as you need, you include, and that's especially great for creating APIs. Let's say this sample API, which gets a history of messages between two users. Here we include some modules of action controller stack, which allow us to use before filter and to require current user. Then we just work with ActiveRecord. We work with our models, with HTTP, with params hash, and at the end we provide a response body, only just a string which we return to a client. And it looks like Rails, but actually that's almost pure REC, and it's very low level and quite fast. But there is maybe even better solution, because REC is fine and even Metal is fine. Metal is fine when you have Rails application, but it's pretty stupid to create Rails application and use it mostly with Metal. So there is a different solution, Sinatra. Sinatra is a framework, or DSL if you want, for creating compact code working, capable to process requests inside process requests from web server. Of course, Sinatra is REC-based, and that's just the middle part of your application. Sinatra doesn't include any rendering engines as Rails does. It doesn't include any backends as Rails does. But you can either use some backends on your choice. You can or you can include Sinatra, mount Sinatra as a Rails inside Rails application to handle several requests. And of course, you can use pure Sinatra with some lightweight tools, some JSON maybe, or plain text output, and data mapper SQL or any other light solution to have a lightweight and feature-rich application. There are several examples of Sinatra code, and the most important part, most important notice is that this maybe 15 lines is the whole web part of your application. Of course, you need views here for first get method, and of course you need some models, but that's not a web part. It's reusable code for any other situations. And this single one file in 15 lines is the whole application. You don't need to have any application controller, routes RB file. You don't need to configure anything. You just write code and it just works. But there is a problem with Sinatra. Sometimes it can be extremely lightweight. You need to do a lot of work with your hands. And here's the place where Patrina comes into play. Patrina is an evolution of Sinatra, is a complete framework for development, feature-rich applications. It's based on Sinatra, and it allows you to use a lot of stuff like ORM backends, JavaScript libraries, test frameworks, and rendering engines out of the box. You just choose what you want to use, and everything is included. And if you don't need something, it isn't included. So they also provide you a modular structure as SQL does. And as soon as it's based on Sinatra, it still remains quick and simple. And you know, Rails has started with creating 15 minutes blogs. But now I think that Rails is too heavy for creating just blog with a couple of models. But Patrina now seems to me to be the best solution for such kind of applications like simple blog. And I just want to show you a couple lines of code you would use in Patrina to create a blog. We have a special Patrina script which generates our projects here, just like Rails does. And we choose some test framework, we choose rendering engine, CSS engine, JavaScript library, and database backend, and we get a folder with special structure. Of course, it's much bigger than pure Sinatra application where you have maybe 5 files. You can have 5 files, 7 files in one directory. Why not? Here we have more like Rails style directory structure with app directory views, maybe config, and so on. But anyway, it's still much smaller than Rails, new Rails application. We describe parts of Patrina web application as independent or maybe slightly linked applications as well. Patrina encourages us to use different applications inside one system, which can share some code, some frameworks, or they can be completely independent. This allows us to have modular structure of our platform, or our web platform as well. So we can have, for example, main website, admin interface, and API as 3 completely separate and independent web applications inside one Patrina application. Sorry for saying applications, but that's Patrina term. And as I've already said, Patrina supports modular structure, and you can register some helpers, mailers, and some other parts of framework, and they are loaded. Otherwise, you are free of them, and you can still have pure Sinatra, maybe with Haml, for example, inside Patrina app. Of course, Patrina provides you some kind of controllers, which look pretty similar to Rails controllers, so nothing revolutionary, nothing completely new to you. Syntax is quite readable, but to my taste, it it's even more readable than Rails syntax, where you have separate files for routes, separate files for some generic code, and so on. Here, everything is in place. Methods, HTTP verbs, types of response, and so on. And the last thing about web frameworks is the benchmarking. If we take an almost empty Hello World application, which would render some HAML layouts, which would render Hello World, and put something into user session just to be more honest to ourselves, so we have something in that application, but we don't work with database, the main part. And we run tests, we can see that rec is evidently the fastest solution. Of course, it will ever be. Rails is really slow, but Sinatra and Patrina are in the middle and are quite close. So you can consider Patrina as a little bit better Sinatra without performance loss. And to be completely sincere, the results would be much closer as soon as you plug the database and other blocking stuff, maybe like ImageMagick, working with file system, network, email, and so on. But anyway, the ranks would be the same. And at the very end, I'd like to tell you about two tools for development which can speed up your working process. The first one is the WebServerPower, developed by 37 Signals. It's pretty simple, very fast, very comfortable to work with. One-line installer, one-line setup of a new web application. You just create a symlink and you are done. You have a web server and you have a web application plugged into that server. You don't need to edit configuration files, you don't need to compile engines from source, you don't need to use passenger pref pane or whatever. And it just works and it's great, and you don't need to know about its internals and config files. And the second tool is RubyEnv. I think many of you are using RVM, but RVM is a big tool which tries to be everything for you. It tries to install Rubies, it tries to manage gem sets, it hides your environment, and RubyEnv is a much more simple, much more straightforward tool which doesn't try to be everything for you. It just allows you to choose global version of Ruby and versions on a project base. Generally speaking, that's all about tools, and that's all about lightweight Ruby applications. And there is just one more thing I want to say. Ruby isn't a silver bullet, and you shouldn't consider Ruby as the only solution of your tasks. You should always consider some different platforms. Why not to use .NET, Scala, Erlang, or whatever, even C++, why not? And don't miss tomorrow's speech of my colleague Timothy Tsvetkov about including Erlang in Ruby environment, Rails environment, and how does it work together. So now that's all, and if you have any questions, I would be glad to answer.
Hello, my name is Sergei Anka. You said that we can include Sinatra directly in Rails. Did you mean that we can use Sinatra like a middleware for Rails? Or how do you use Sinatra in Rails?
Well, in Rails you can mount Sinatra in routes. You can just use it maybe in a similar way like you do with Rails engines. You want to know the code or what? I'm sorry.
No, just the purposes for for which?
No, you see, Sinatra is a rec application, and that's why you can mount any rec application inside Rails. So why not Sinatra?
Okay, thank you.
Hello, my name is Dmitry Sinchenko, and
Hello.
I want to ask you what type of servers you advise to run Rails applications, like mongrel, thin, passenger module, or passenger standalone. What solution is the fastest? Fastest now.
Okay, thank you. Well, according to my experience, the most suitable and fastest solution is Unicorn with Nginx as a front end, so something like this. Passenger is fine, of course, Passenger is fine, especially version 3. But you know, anyway, it depends on the hardware you can afford, because a mongrel cluster can be very fast as soon as you have a lot of memory. Maybe if you have 30 gigabytes of RAM and you need extremely fast application, use mongrel, because mongrel is very greedy, but when you have a lot of memory, it's fast. But in usual cases, when you don't have you don't have anything extraordinary, we prefer Unicorn with Nginx. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Vidmantas from Lithuania. I would like to ask, if you end up including a lot of plugins, modules into lightweight applications like Sinatra, including ActiveRecord, Haml, and so on, does it really make sense using such tools then? Maybe you should consider just removing unneeded parts from a Rails application.
Okay, thank you. Good question. Of course, sometimes it makes sense, but you know, Sinatra syntax, Sinatra API maybe is much more simple than Rails syntax and Rails solution. That's why you know, when you don't have a lot of middle stack, I mean controllers and so on, routers, like you don't have them in Sinatra and you have them in Rails. Anyway, it works faster and it's easier to maintain the middle part. Of course, if you include ActiveRecord, if you include ERB and anything else inside Sinatra, it's pretty much like Rails in terms of performance. But performance isn't the key. The key is simplicity, the speed of your development, the speed of transferring project to another developer, for example, and so on. So it still makes sense, of course, unless the situation when you have maybe really complex applications. So Sinatra isn't a silver bullet, Patrina isn't a silver bullet, and Rails is still fine, and Rails is still a great solution for almost most part of web applications. So the short answer is it depends. Thank you.
Good morning, Maxim Potapov from QuickBlocks. Have you ever compared the performance of data mapper SQL, how it's related to each other?
Oh, thank you. Data mapper versus SQL performance, actually they are pretty much the same. I haven't done it myself, I've just read some benchmarks on the internet. Sometimes data mapper is maybe 5 or 10% faster, sometimes 5-10% slower, and the main difference between them, between SQL and data mapper, I think is the approach to the ORM, because data mapper says that code is primary object, and you described your database in terms of code and you use it. And Sinatra says, like the ActiveRecord does, it says that a database is important and it mirrors database to the code. So that's the main difference, not the performance. Thank you.